Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Cartoons versus COVID. I'm your host, the Gruppeteer, and we are today with the wonderful, immaculate Dana Terrace, best known for her work on The Owl House, as well as storyboarding on DuckTales and Gravity Falls. She's joining me today from Los Angeles, California, and it is, of course, to help raise money for people working on the front line with the COVID pandemic, which is still going on. Remember that. As specifically those working at the Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center, right up here in beautiful Manchester, New Hampshire. Ms. Terrace, thank you very much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, of course. It's pronounced Dana, by the way.
Dana Terrace. Alrighty, we're off to a great start then. I got the Terrace part right.
Yeah. Last time someone called me Dana was in Russia. Experience, but yeah, thank you for having me on the show and for doing this for such a good cause.
Well, Ms. Terrace, I'd love to, of course, talk about the Owl House. I'd love to talk about where you came from, but of course, the first thing I'd like to ask is, what are you doing to keep yourself sane during the quarantine?
I am an introvert and I've never went out that much, so quarantine isn't that much different from my day-to-day life. I'm just working a lot and drawing when I'm not working, and that's kind of what I was doing before.
Pretty much. I mean, it didn't change too much for me either. I don't do the interviews outside most of the time.
Yeah. I do have a daily morning walk with my neighbor Luce, who is also a board artist and consultant on the show, and we have a daily routine where we make sure we get out of the house for at least 15 minutes a day.
Yeah. Is that the namesake of Luce and the Owl House?
Sure
Look
is.
At look at that. Look at that. Did you and her know each other before you started boarding on the show together?
Oh my gosh, yes. When I was coming up with the show, we were roommates back in 2016, 2017. We were roommates, and before then even we were acquaintances in college, and we were roommates for about a year and a half, 2 years before the show even was conceived.
At SVA, right? You went to the School of Visual Arts in New York?
School of Visual Arts, correct.
So I go to the Savannah College of Art and Design right now for animation. Right. And one thing that I like about SCAD a lot, which you seem to dislike about, which you said was lacking, about SVA, was that there's sort of like a lack of industry insight to the way that they structure their curriculum. Do you feel that this is something that was difficult for you to adjust to when you first got into working professionally?
Yes, absolutely. There was, I feel like I need to caveat, I did have good teachers at SVA who taught me very practical and useful skills, but even our most experienced teacher hadn't worked in the industry for a good while, so there was no one who had worked in TV in the past 15 years. So it was really difficult to learn specific things about pipelines. So when I first got my first real gig as a revisionist on Gravity Falls, I was learning so much on the job. And you were talking about Rob Renzetti before. Renzetti, Alex Hirsch, Matt Brawley, Stephen Sandoval, all these people who had been working on the show before me really taught me how to do my job. And thank God they were patient, and thank God I tend to be a fast learner, but it was a really difficult period. I thought I was going to be fired every day.
Yeah, that's fair. And I'm not trying to bash on SVA for those listening who go to the School of Visual Arts. We love SVA.
I'll bash on SVA all you want.
We'll see how the SCAD thing works. I don't know if I have to transfer. I don't want to bash on any art schools yet, maybe.
Okay.
Well, New Hampshire Institute of Art, but that's pretty low key. And the SVA is not the only school that you went to. I was interested to find out that you also did a lot of work for the Drawing Tutorial Online Academy. There's a bunch of videos. Are you aware of these? There's a bunch of videos online of your sketchbooks with this instructor. His name's Matt.
Yes.
And they're fantastic. They're fantastic.
Oh God, sometimes I'll see one of those videos pop up again, and I'll just look at the sketchbook. And I'm like, good Lord. So Matt Archambault, that
Yeah.
teacher, he was one of my drawing instructors at SVA. So I didn't do work, or I didn't go to drawing tutorials online. It was just kind of like he would ask.
Like since you were there, yeah.
Yeah, he would ask the students to take videos. We would say yes or no, and then he'd we'd give him permission to put it on his website.
Hmm. What does it feel like to draw for you? Like, is drawing for you a release? Is drawing for you a way to express, or get the ideas out of your head? I mean, how do you approach it?
I like these questions. Ooh, drawing theory.
I know. Thank you. My mom wrote them.
Oh.
She did.
Well, oh God, now I'm thinking about when my mom wrote a paper for me in 4th grade because I was puking. Anyway.
We'll put a pin in that. Wait a minute. You're not getting away from that.
Drawing. Yes. Drawing for me is 100% therapeutic. It always has been. It's always a very visceral and emotional feeling. I tend to be very disciplined when it comes to drawing practice and observational drawing, figure drawing, like just getting the techniques of stuff down. But when it comes to like personal drawing, it's always because I want to scream, but I can't, so I draw. I want to punch a wall, I can't, so I draw. It's always emotional, which can be exhausting. Yeah,
it's expressing your emotions with less property damage and less noise complaints, pretty much. Exactly. I know how it feels. I was interested that you've been drawing for a long time. Your first drawing was a cat over a vine of a pit of lava, by the sound of it. And I always ask this to people who love to draw. Are you somebody who has to do it with music? Are you someone who has to do it listening to podcasts? Can you just be alone with your thoughts and do it?
Music definitely helps. I've been listening to the same soundtrack since 2009, which is super, super embarrassing, but it helped. Like, whenever I need to center myself, I just listen to that same horrible playlist from high school.
Yeah.
Podcasts are difficult. I have a hard time, or watching TV while drawing is difficult because I have a hard time like focusing on what I'm feeling with voices. So yeah, silence is the best, but then you get very distracted at the same time.
I can do music just fine, but like when I listen to podcasts and try to draw, it's hard. It's just like white noise. You know what I mean? Like you don't get anything out of it, so why bother?
Exactly. And like I like listening to a lot of like political or historical podcasts, and if I'm not 100% paying attention,
then what's the point? Yeah. I know. So when it comes to something like that, I have to know, what are the top 3 most played songs on your playlist? Your 2009 playlist.
I don't think I'd be able to name songs, but I listen to a lot of TV on the radio. Is that the right?
Yeah, that's the name of the band. You're good. Okay. Yes, yeah. Happy Idiot, Seeds, yeah.
Yes, TV on the radio. Saint Motel and Bus Driver are kind of I'm circulating between those bands.
Yeah.
Right now.
I'm glad that you were very concerned about getting TV on the radio right, as if they listened to this and they were like, she better know. Like, she better know. I mean, for all we've done for her.
They're one of my favorite bands ever, and like I would feel horrible if I just forgot them. I don't know. I don't pay attention to music that much.
So let's take it back. We were talking before that you are from beautiful Hampton, Connecticut, the land of the sleeping giant, but you spent a lot of your time going to school at a Catholic school in New Haven, right?
The Catholic school was actually in Hamden, but I did go to high school and spend most of my time in New Haven because my parents worked there for their jobs, and eventually I went to high school there, so I just started spending most of my time there.
Yeah, and I would be interested because my mother and my grandmother both went to Catholic school, and it's a very sort of conservative environment. It's a very sort of restricted environment, at least the one that they went to. And I would be remiss if I said that I didn't think it was the best outlet for creative expression. Did you find this to be the case for you? You're making a face. She's like, I've been waiting all life for this one.
I hated going to Catholic school. It's a huge bummer. I started calling myself an atheist when I was in 4th grade before I even went to the tournament. It just made everyone mad when I said it, and it kept
Yeah.
sending me to the principal's office, which meant I didn't have to go to class. So I kept saying it. And then when I
Yeah.
learned what it meant, I was like, sure, okay, why not? Um, uh, a lot of my art influences come from, the horrific Catholic art of like, Jesus being thrown up on the cross, bleeding and blood and
Yeah.
tortured. Like that's like the only art I really saw for 8 years of my life. So it bled into my personal work pretty easily.
Yeah.
Man, you have not experienced life until a nun has held you under a blasting sink and just forcing you to like gulp down water.
In that case, I'm okay with not experiencing life. Like I can live with it.
Yeah, it was man, Catholic school sucked. I am so
I
happy to be an adult right now.
I like that you were worried about not you were like worried about offending TV on the radio, but you were like, dude, Catholics, I just hate the whole thing. Like,
Hey, no, I know good Catholics. I know decent Catholics. I'm just saying the Catholic school I went to, not a fan.
that's fair. No, that's fair. I mean, I would hate to have to wear the same outfit every day or something like that, like a cartoon character. Maybe that's where it comes from. I guess that's where it stems from.
Yeah.
But I was very interested to find out that you're very close with your aunts and your mom and so on and so forth. And a lot of this bled into Ida's character, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, my it, Ida's character and just the whole idea of a female mentor definitely comes from my experience of losing my father very young, and the majority of my remaining family were women. Nana, my aunta, my mom, my various godmothers and other women in my life, my teachers, all the teachers I liked were always women, or at least the ones who liked me. So when I was trying to come up with characters for this show, I had to create a female mentor character. Like it just is the only thing I really know.
I do find that very interesting. But I have to ask, have they seen? I'm assuming they've seen the Owl House. How do they feel that Ida? Do they feel that Ida represents them? Do they say, "I don't drink apple blood"? What do they say?
They all watch the show. They're very supportive. Some of them have passed away before the show came out, which is sad, but I know they would watch it if they could. My mom in particular, when she first saw Ida's design, when I first drew her, she was like, do I look that old? And I'm like, it's not supposed to be exactly you.
Yeah. I hope she didn't mind the fang or anything. I don't know.
My mom actually does have fangs. She has extremely sharp canines. So that's where the fang comes from.
You learned something new every day, I guess. Maybe she did like the fang then. I don't know.
Yeah, she likes the fangs. They all the women in my family do want Ida to be more buff. They want her to have like crazy
big muscles. Yeah. Well, you can fit that in. You got that season 2 coming. We're good. We're good.
Everyone's design changes.
Yeah, we're gonna go do like the Batman animated series route. We're just halfway through. Why not? Luce has a mohawk.
Yeah.
So of course there's the sort of nurture side of where your ideas come from, but where your artistic influences come from, where you sort of learned to draw, where you sort of learned to start making these characters, these monsters that appear in the Owl House. It seems to be rooted back to the fact that you and I both love Pokemon Red, I'll speak for myself. Pokemon taught me how to draw. And Pokemon also taught me English too. Like I learned that like hydro means like water from like hydro pump. I learned that like sun, like solar means sun for like solar moon. Yeah. But that's irregardless. But like Pokemon like taught me how to draw and stuff, like how to draw creatures, how to like shift weight from here to there. Did you have the same sort of experience with it?
Oh hell yeah. Ken Sugimori is one of my greatest influences of all time. When I was working with the character designers to put together the final designs for Owl House, I would reference him like do something similar to these proportions because they're perfect and so appealing and I love them. I actually had the opportunity to meet Ken Sugimori.
No way.
Dude.
Did you really?
Yes.
I would have cried. I would have just been like, I'm sorry.
No. Oh my God, that's the thing. Oh, okay. So just a little bit of context. Me and my boyfriend Alex, we were in Japan and we had the incredible opportunity to tour 2 rooms of Game Freak because they're extremely secretive, but we had the chance to talk to Ken Sugimori, and I fully cried. I went in front of him, and he was very stoic. He was very confused, and he walked away without saying anything. And I bawled like a baby.
Well, I don't know if he speaks English or not. So this English girl just comes up, starts crying, and he just has to look there and be like, all right.
There was a translator. The translator did tell him that I was a huge fan. He was a big inspiration. He's basically the reason why I pursued art as a career. And he was just like, oh, thank you very much. And ran. But I do not regret it. It's top 10 moments of my life.
That would be, I've said it before on the show, but my goal in life would be to have Ken Sugimori draw a picture of me. Just like a picture, like not even like in the Pokemon style, just like draw a picture of me. Like I just cry if I met him.
Oh my God.
So if you had to, we could go on about him all day.
If I met him again, I would just pray that he didn't remember me.
What if he did? What if he was like, you're the girl that cried. You're the crying American.
I think I'd cry again.
So one thing that I can definitely tell the Pokemon influence is that, if you don't mind me saying, King has a lot of it's very similar to like Marowak and Cubone, right?
Sure. That's actually, as much as I love Pokemon, that was actually a complete accident. And when when the design was finalized and I was literally drawing the poster for the big announcement back in February 2018, one of my executives finally came to me and was like, is it a problem that Cubone looks so much, or that King looks so much like Cubone? And I was like, dude, we just shipped animation for the first episode. His original design was actually much more human and much more with like an actual skull head. It was a little more
like a human skull head.
Not a human skull. It was a made-up animal. I was just messing around. But over time, with developing the story, it made more sense to make King smaller and cuter and fluffier, and eventually he just turned into this design. And you know what? Maybe I just subconsciously copied Cubone because I love Pokemon.
I mean, that's fair.
We're here.
The thing is, I'm sure you've seen all these like whenever somebody makes a TV show, you know as well as I do, there's like a billion conspiracy theories. Maybe the Owl House is purgatory and Luz is dead. Woo! But there's a bunch that like try to connect. It's like that game theory thing where like Ness is Sans. There's a bunch that like try to connect like King is a Cubone and Luz is, and it's like, what are you talking about?
No, it's just an accident.
She confirmed it here, folks. You heard it. So where do the other part of your artistic influences when it comes to drawing these creatures come from?
I just always liked drawing monsters. Mm-hmm. My mom recently mailed me a bunch of my old sketchbooks, and going back even to like middle school, I was always drawing monsters in some fashion because I think I always just found it very fun and freeing that you don't have to be constrained to a skeleton that already exists. That's why I get so mad when I see alien designs or monster designs that are just elongated human bodies with like a dog head or a lizard head. I'm like, come on, we can do better than this.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I know what you mean. And I do find that interesting. I could make a tally of how many times I said I do find that interesting, but I do find it interesting that you bring up this sort of lack of anatomy, because your sketchbooks, and I'm not trying to flatter you, your sketchbooks are so detailed and they are so just full in these old videos, and I'll link them in the description. They're just sorry, it's too late. I said it.
10 years old. So one of them's 11 years old now.
God. Well, the point is when you look at these sketchbooks, they're so full of everything, right? They're just packed to the brim. No margin is left untouched by the pencil. And do you find yourself when you're drawing, do you find yourself referring to other artists' work? Do you find yourself referring to like a Pokemon, or do you find yourself using references from life?
Well, during those college years when those videos of those sketchbooks were taken, I was doing everything. I was making it a point to be drawing at least 8 hours a day because, you know, I knew that I was kind of a big fish from a little pond jumping into a bigger pond, and I just wanted to keep improving as much as possible. So you'll find copies of masterworks in there. You'll find obviously just like figure drawing and reference stuff. You'll see me playing around, me obviously copying other artists like Loish or something, because that's what I was into. But nowadays, I try really hard not to think of, if I'm going to be referencing someone or if I'm going to be learning from someone, I try to be much more direct and much more, what's the word? Selective with who I'm drawing from.
Yeah. So are there references you use when you draw concept art or when you draw promo art for, the Owl House?
For Owl House specifically, I mean, there's just 3 artists that I'm always going back to: Remedio Veros, I always forget where the S goes, Hieronymus Bosch, and like Bruegel the Elder. And less for specific drawing techniques and more just for inspiration. That's the kind of art I surround myself with in my office, my work office. But for my own personal art, the main people I think of while I'm drawing are Naoki Urasawa, the mangaka for Pluto and 20th Century Boys. So good. And Tatsuyuki Tanaka. It's I'm not anywhere near their skill level, but I dream of it someday.
Yeah, I mean, you got to start somewhere, I guess. To completely change the conversation, because I have to pull this pin out eventually. I have to know the story. Why did your mom write you an essay because you were puking? And will this ever make it into the Owl House?
No, I don't know if that story will make it into the Owl House. When I was in 4th grade, I was chosen to be, there was a magazine called The Weekly Reader where student reporters would, get to talk with like the senator of your state for a half an hour, and then you write a report on it. So I got to meet Senator Dodd in 4th grade. I can't pin the year right now, but I was so nervous and I had a stomach ache, and I think I had like bad pizza or something. I ended up just vomiting all night, and my mom basically just wrote my report for me because I was so sick, and she was like, "You are not gonna fuck this up." And I was just like, "Oh God.
This is the senator we're talking about.
This is gonna go on your college resume."
I know. You gotta love it. Oh, yeah. So, so bringing it back to, I just wanted to find out what that was. So bringing it back to, you were talking about how when you started out on Gravity Falls, you were slowly learning. You were a quick learner, but you were still learning things off the bat. And then you went to DuckTales, and now you are the showrunner of your own show. What are the differences that you've had between Gravity Falls, DuckTales, and now being a showrunner in terms of synergy, in terms of what it's like to board?
Well, let's see. On Gravity Falls, I was a revisionist, moved up to being a board artist, and I did some freelance animation for specific scenes. I just remember, like, Gravity Falls, most of everyone was friends with each other. Alex was really, really wonderful to work with. Steven Sandoval was my primary director for a lot of episodes, and he's also the supervising producer on Owl House, because I love working with him so much, but he basically taught me how to board, and he kind of like guided me in this job when I was so terrified of not knowing what I was doing. But luckily, revisionist positions are wonderful positions to learn how to do this kind of stuff. Moving on to DuckTales, I was directing for the first time. Again, there was like a good month where I thought, oh my God, why did I do this? This is so hard. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Every new job for the first time is so scary. And again, I really loved working on DuckTales. Matt Youngberg was a really good showrunner to work for. He mentored me for a short bit, in a certain program, in a mentor program at DTV, and yeah, that crew was great. I loved my board team. Ben Holm, Emmy Sisierga, and Jason Riker were my board team. Was my board team on DuckTales, and they were so fun to work with. I think the difference between all that and running a show is that if you're directing and then if you're boarding, if you smash those jobs together and then also take every other job in the pipeline and smash it together, somehow that's what my job is now. It's every single job, kind of. Mm-hmm. It's really
no. I know what you mean. I promise I do.
Okay. When I was first greenlit and I was in my first few weeks of show running, Alex told me that it's like being the president and being the janitor at the same time. Like you're making all these crazy decisions that are affecting everyone's day, but you're also spending your entire day putting out like the tiniest little fires, cleaning up the tiniest little messes, doing all the stuff that accidentally gets left behind. It's interesting. And for the first year, I was very, very scared and stressed out.
Well, what surprised you most about show running is because there's always, whenever you take on a position that you think you sort of know everything about, there's always like one thing that you're like, I've never thought of that before. When I became a pizza boy, which I currently am, as we talked about last episode with Chris Pern, I never thought about the fact that I'd have to pay for my own gas. That's a bad example, but what is something that you learned that you never would have thought about otherwise when you became a showrunner?
This is gonna be weird to say, but nothing in the job has really surprised me. That's not to say that it wasn't easy, and that's not to say that I had some of the worst days of my life being a showrunner. Mm-hmm. It doesn't, but I did have friends who had shows and who had been showrunning for a while who kind of told me what to expect, Matt Brawley is about 6 months ahead of me in production, so he was already telling me what he was going through, so I had a little bit of I didn't have to do that much guesswork. My buddies Chris and Shane Houghton, the creators of Big City Greens, they had already been running their show for at least a year before I was greenlit, so I was just getting as much information from them as possible. So I already kind of knew what to expect, but it was still, I guess the hardest thing is just managing morale and teams. When you're an artist, you're behind the screen all the time and you're just focused on your craft, and then suddenly you have to be talking to humans.
Yeah, that's always hard.
Yeah, but it's interesting.
No, I know what I definitely know what you mean.
I'm trying.
I guess in a way, I'm glad that there's nothing that surprised you. I guess in a way that I'm glad that nothing quote unquote caught you off guard. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Except for tiny specific things of for some reason that's no one's fault, something got left off the schedule and this episode has already shipped, but we need to get this done. What's problem solving, just stuff that would happen on any show. Yeah.
So what was the process for greenlighting? Because I know that like I said, obviously you worked on as a revisionist, and then you worked as a storyboard artist, and so on and so forth. But the general path to getting a show for most people is years and years and years. And not to say that you cut any corners or anything, but you got yours relatively early in your career. Hopefully your career is very long, and this is relatively early.
Yeah, I hope I'm not peaking.
Yeah.
I'm generally considered a younger showrunner, and I'm very grateful that I was able to pitch my show when I did, and I had the good fortune that they were looking for a show like this. Mm-hmm. Or at least they didn't say, fuck no. But
you just walked in and they were like, nah.
Like this, no. But I did it was in 2017 when I pitched. I was directing on DuckTales, and at that point I knew certain people at the studio. I knew who to pitch to. So I pitched to Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, and Disney 2 show ideas: Owl House and another one that I won't name right now.
It might be made into a show, so we don't talk about it.
I still want to make it.
The show about me, that's what she's talking about.
Yes, exactly. Back when you were, what, 15? Oh, God, never mind.
15 when I started the show. I'll be played by Bruce Campbell in the movie. Bruce Campbell with a little mop on his head. Oh,
gosh. Anyways, after they saw my pitch packet, which was roughly 15 pages, they optioned me to write a script for a pilot. At that point, I told them, I'm going to write a 22-minute show. And they were like, no. And I was like, okay, bye. And then they were like, yes, okay, wait, do it. And so I wrote a 22-minute pilot. And before they even asked me, I started boarding it. And I made it into kind of my own animatic, because their development is a very tricky place, because when you're working for a studio that doesn't know what it wants, and Disney TV has treated me very well, but sometimes they don't know what they want out of their shows. They can be very picky.
Every studio does, to be fair. Every studio
to an extent is like that. So I took a very bullheaded approach to development and just said, so here's my own schedule. Here's what I'm going to be doing. Here's when it's going to be finished, and here you go. Take it or leave it.
Yeah.
There were notes processes in between with executives and people weighing in. At the end of the day, I just kind of did what I wanted, because I thought, this is the one chance I'm going to get to just make my own pilot. And it took about a year and a half to make the pilot. There's a short animated sequence that's never been released online before, with a lot of old designs. And then it went through a couple of rounds of testings with actual kids. They liked it. Show got greenlit. Year and a half. And I was greenlit January 2018, something like that.
Yeah. That's when you said that you started, working on it. So is the script that you wrote for the pilot the first episode of the show?
It's similar.
Yeah.
It's similar, but for example, the character Amity is actually in the original pilot, but she was taken out because I wanted to introduce her a little differently in the show. There's actually a lot of stuff about the original pilot that I kind of wish I put into the show, but it just didn't work with the bigger story that I had figured out later on.
Yeah. Again, like my character, I was in the pilot.
Sorry you got cut.
It's no hard feelings. So one thing that was a staple of Gravity Falls was that Mr. Hirsch was always pushing the censors. And I would never ask you to dish on Disney by any means, because they probably own this show if I think about it. But did you ever find yourself in an instance where Disney was pushing back on a certain thing you wanted to do?
Oh yes, all the time. First season, we would get these very interesting notes. Like, every show has a different S&P person working for them, and they hide their names behind layers and layers of other people, so that we don't call them up and yell at them. I think Alex had a very sensitive S&P person, because I've seen the notes he used to get, and they were crazy. Like, no wonder he was constantly fighting. The one note that I more often than not get dinged on is just make sure that this isn't too scary for 5-year-olds, specifically children under the age of 6. But this is where I push back, because from the very beginning, I've been pushing that this is an older show. It's technically rated 6 to 11, but the studio has a kind of the studio sees it as a more like 8 to 14 age range, which is preferable.
I do find it interesting you bring that up, because some people classify this as a comedy, of course, but some people also classify it as a horror. And I would be interested to see how you would react to that.
I mean, I'm the one who pushed for the horror.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am a big fan of body horror. I'm a big fan of scary movies. My boyfriend is not. But like,
It's not how it works.
but I love horror, and when I was a kid, I loved being a little scared, and like the first season of Owl House definitely pushes more fantasy because I was still figuring out the tone of the show, my own style of storytelling, because I was still very much being influenced by past jobs. Mm-hmm. But we really start getting kind of creepy and weirder in further episodes.
Yeah, these upcoming episodes.
Yeah.
The reason that I ask about if Disney pushed back is I'm sure you're aware of this, but I don't know if you've been asked about it before. There is a how do I put this nicely? You know what I'm gonna say. You know,
yeah.
There is a group of individuals called
1 million of them.
1 million moms. Can I read the quote? Have you read the quote before?
Yes, please read the quote. I've seen it.
The show tries to portray witchcraft as a positive tool to fight evil that's similar to what real-life witches have been promoting over the past few years. I can't read this part without laughing. As they've been putting hexes on President Trump and others in order to fight for their beliefs. A million moms said that about the Owl House. It seems that the people at A Million Moms, as well as the always lovable people at the Common Sense Media, feel that the show in a way promotes satanic values. I would love to hear your response on if you're trying to hex the president.
President Trump can eat shit. But as far as witchcraft goes, witchcraft and Satanism are completely different things. Mm-hmm. Witchcraft can be used as a tool of good, especially in finding spirituality for yourself and learning how to take care of yourself and become more one with your life. I am not a witch. I do not practice Wiccanism. Yeah, sure, whatever. But I have
witchiness.
The witchcraft in my show is completely fantastical. It's completely made up, has no ties with any actual practice. Maybe a few little things, but nothing really. Like, I'm not trying to make a statement about the Wiccan movement. Mm-hmm. I'm just having fun with fantasy creatures and monsters and magic.
And no Satan involved.
But I do love pissing them off. It is really, really funny.
If your goal is to cast a hex on President Trump, well, I agree. I good goal. Watch the Owl House, please. But this is interesting that you find yourself so interested in, or rather you find yourself so interested in these magical elements, and people draw comparisons to the occult or so on and so forth. Obviously every episode can't start like the Thriller music video with the Michael Jackson thing. But as you went to a Catholic school, do you in a way maybe use your outlet as like a sort of rebellion, or maybe this is why you got so interested in, this sort of magical side of things?
I mean, sure. Like I said earlier, I used to, before I even knew what atheist meant, I used to say I was an atheist because it would make my teachers angry because they hated me. Whenever I would cut my hair short, I would get called a dyke and a lot of like mean things. I was made fun of a lot. So I grew up liking to piss off my hyper-religious teachers. Yeah. Like I said, that's not to say that I have some great statement to make against the Catholic Church, at least not in this specific project. But it's just the moral of the show always comes down to be nice to your friends, be a good person, accept others that are a little different from you. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that message. They just don't like the fact that I call some of these people witches.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all. Oh, and demons. They're just reacting to words. It's pathetic.
I understand you're upset. However, if it makes you feel any better, I'm sure that 1 million moms I'm sure that 1 million moms did not come together and they were like, have you seen the Owl House? No, have you seen the Owl House? 1 million times they said that. And You brought up in I think it was the H3 podcast, that when you went to Catholic school, there were all the things that got banned, and it became like cool to read Harry Potter, and it became cool to read like Narnia because they were, they were banned by the church or something. Do you hope that people will catch on, people who maybe are feeling this rebellion against Catholic schools or something, will catch on to the Owl House, and it'll gain this sort of, in lack of a better word, cult following?
Sure, yeah. I would like all types of people to be able to watch and enjoy my show. I've seen a few tweets who say like, "Oh, my mom doesn't want me watching the show, but I'm still gonna, even though I'm Christian, because it's cute and it has good values." And I'm like, "Cool, thanks. Right on."
Yeah, people say that about this show. It's all right. It's all the same. So, Ms. Terrace, it has been outstanding to talk to you. I would love to know, before we wrap up here, what is something that people can expect to see in the upcoming season? No spoilers, of course.
Well, the second half of season 1 is beginning to air on 7/11.
I keep calling it the upcoming season. It's still the same season.
I mean, seasons. God,
the upcoming block, yeah.
The upcoming next couple episodes. What to expect? Some romance, some spooks, some horror, some drama, and a lot of owls. A lot more owls than before. Well, some owls. At least one owl. More
owls, yeah. At least one owl. I'll keep a tally.
Yeah.
Do you? I'm sure that you don't get to choose the scheduling, but do they just come up to you and say like, we're only doing this block for now, and then you have extra time to do this second block?
Generally, they do like to release 10 episodes in a bunch. They do get to decide whether or not they roll out weekly or they roll out in a binge format daily, which I think is just horrible. I forgot where I was going with that. Yes, they control the schedule.
Yes, they control the schedule. And it has been a while since I've talked to someone who works for the Disney Association. And I would love to know, would you ever okay your characters having walk around characters at Disney World?
Only if, I don't know. I hate Disneyland.
You don't like Disneyland?
I don't. I find it very stressful.
Is Disneyland the one in? I've never been to either of them. Is Disneyland the one in California?
Yes, and Disney World is.
Disney World's in Florida.
I would probably say yes, just to get my own picture taken with them, but I think I would feel bad about it afterwards because someone's in that suit and.
You'd feel so bad. That's fair.
I'm like, I am sorry.
Don't Disney employees get free admission to Disney?
Yes.
Yeah, so you could go whenever you want. I know, lucky you. And Ms. Terrace, before we wrap up, if there is somebody who is listening to this podcast and they are looking for a way to get into the animation industry, if they are excited to be a showrunner themselves or a revisionist themselves, what advice would you give them?
Draw every day, write every day, show your drawings and what you write to other people, get their reactions. You don't have to take their advice, but it's just good to listen to reactions. And there's a bunch of tutorials and online classes that you can take without having to spend $1 million on an expensive art school.
Don't make the same mistake we did, people. Yeah, please.
Get out while you can.
We're begging you. I can't get out now. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Dana Terrace is the creator of the Owl House, as well as a former storyboard artist on Gravity Falls and DuckTales. The second half of season 1 of the Owl House will come out in just a few days on the 11th of July, which is hopefully before this episode will be edited and put out to the masses. Ms. Terrace, I'd like to thank you so much for coming on to Cartoons vs. COVID today. Do you have anything you'd like to say before we sign off?
No, just thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
If anybody is interested in donating to the cause, please consider checking the links in the bio below for the CDC network for proper donation channels, as well as the donation channel for the Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center right here in Manchester, New Hampshire. Ladies and gentlemen, our next episode will be with Dan Povenmire, creator of Phineas and Ferb. And a few weeks. I still have to schedule it. So stay tuned for more interviews with your favorite cartoon creators, and we will see you guys around. Goodbye.